Don't touch her. The girl's voice came sharp and low, like a warning from an animal that had already decided to bite. Deputy Carter barely glanced down at her as he tightened his grip on the other twin's wrist. Mira struggled, but the man's fingers were iron around her arm. The bread she had grabbed from the market table lay crushed in the dirt between them. You stole again, Carter said. Town's done being patient. Lena stepped closer. The crowd around the market had gone quiet. Everyone knew the twins. Everyone had a story about them. Let go, Lena said again. Carter smirked and pulled Mira closer. Or what? Mira twisted hard. Lena. Lena moved before anyone expected it. Her hand came up fast. The broken neck of a glass bottle glinted in the afternoon light. She held it inches from Carter's throat. The crowd gasped. Don't, Lena said quietly. Carter froze. His smile faded. You gonna stab the law now? Lena's hand trembled, but the bottle stayed steady. Try me. Mira stared at her sister. Lena, stop. He's hurting you. I'm fine. Carter laughed once, dry and ugly. See this? This is what the town's dealing with. Two feral little devils. Someone in the crowd muttered agreement. Wild girls. No parents, no rules. They burned their own house down. Lena heard every word. Her jaw tightened. Carter slowly raised his free hand. Put the glass down, girl. Lena didn't move. Put it down. Mira spoke again, softer this time. Lena, please. The moment stretched. The crowd waited for blood. Then a voice cut through the silence. Enough. It came from behind them, calm and flat. Carter glanced over Lena's shoulder. A tall man stood at the edge of the market road. Dust covered his boots. A worn coat hung from his shoulders. His beard was streaked with gray and his eyes watched everything without hurry. Carter scoffed. Stay out of it, drifter. The man walked closer. Lena didn't lower the bottle. The man looked at Myra's trapped wrist, then at the crushed bread in the dirt. They hungry, he said. Carter snorted. Not my problem. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a few coins. He tossed them onto the vendor's table. The metal clinked against wood. For the bread, he said. The vendor grabbed the coins quickly. Carter frowned. You buying trouble, stranger. The man's eyes moved to Lena. Put the bottle down. Lena studied him. Something about the way he stood didn't feel afraid. She lowered the glass slowly. Carter released Myra's wrist with a shove. Take your circus somewhere else, he muttered. Mira rubbed her arm and stepped beside Lena. The twins looked at the stranger together. He turned away as if the moment was already finished. Come with me, he said. Lena blinked. What? The man kept walking toward the tree line beyond the last buildings of the town. Mira whispered, We're not going anywhere with him. But Lena kept watching the man's back as he walked. The crowd started talking again. Those girls will rob him blind. Or worse. He'll regret it. The stranger stopped at the edge of the road and looked back once. You coming? Lena glanced at Mira. Myra's eyes were uncertain. He's a stranger, Mira said. Lena nodded. So is everyone else. Mira hesitated. Lena took a step forward. Mira sighed and followed. Behind them the town watched as the twins crossed the road toward the trees. Carter spat into the dust. Let the woods deal with them, he muttered. Lena heard him but didn't look back. The stranger waited until the girls reached him. Up close he looked older than she first thought. His face was cut with deep lines from sun and years. He studied them for a long moment. You got names? He asked. Lena folded her arms. Why? People usually have them. Mira answered quietly. I'm Mira. Lena added after a second. Lena. The man nodded once. Silas. Lena tilted her head. You live out there? She pointed toward the hills rising beyond the trees. Silas glanced toward the mountains like a man checking on something that belonged to him. Yeah. Mira frowned. Why'd you help us? Silas started walking again. Because nobody else did. The twins followed him into the shadow of the trees. Behind them the town slowly disappeared, swallowed by distance and silence. Lena walked beside Mira and whispered, You think he's dangerous? Mira glanced at Silas ahead of them. Probably. Lena gave a small smile. Good. Silas did not slow as the trees closed around them. Lena and Mira followed a few steps behind, careful, silent, watching the way he moved through the woods like a man who had walked the same ground for years. Neither girl trusted the quiet. In town, quiet usually meant someone was about to shout or throw something. Here the silence felt different. It felt older. Mira leaned close to Lena and whispered, If he tries anything, we run. Lena nodded but kept her eyes on Silas's back. We won't run, she whispered back. We'll fight. The path narrowed and climbed slowly uphill. After a long stretch of walking, the trees opened just enough to reveal a small cabin sitting against the slope of the hill. The wood was weathered gray. Smoke drifted lazily from a crooked chimney. Silas stepped onto the porch and pushed the door open. Inside, he said. Lena didn't move. She circled the cabin slowly, scanning the windows and the walls like she was studying a trap. Mira stepped onto the porch and looked through the doorway. You coming? She asked her sister. Lena finally stepped inside. The cabin was simple. One table. 2 chairs. A narrow bed in the corner. A stove near the wall. Shelves held jars and tools and a few books that looked like they had not been touched in years. Lena noticed something first. She turned toward the door and examined the handle carefully. Then she stepped outside again and checked it from the other side. Mira frowned. What are you doing? Lena looked at Silas. You don't have locks. Silas shrugged slightly and set his coat down. Don't need them. Lena raised an eyebrow. People could walk in. Silas glanced around the empty woods through the window. People don't come here. Mira stepped further inside. Her eyes landed on a rifle mounted on the wall above the stove. You live alone? She asked. Yes. Why? Silas poured water into a pot and placed it on the stove. People talk too much. Lena leaned against the table. You don't talk much either. Silas stirred the pot slowly. That's the idea. The smell of stew began filling the cabin as he added dried meat and vegetables from a jar. Myra's stomach growled loud enough for everyone to hear. Lena smirked at her. Silas pretended not to notice but filled 3 bowls once the stew began to bubble. He set them on the table and sat down. The girls didn't move. Lena stared at the bowl suspiciously. Poison? She asked flatly. Silas lifted his spoon and took a slow bite. He swallowed. See? Mira stepped closer but still looked uncertain. You could be immune, Lena muttered. Silas sighed quietly. Then watch me eat the whole thing. Mira grabbed the bowl before Lena could stop her and began eating quickly. Lena hesitated another second before sitting down and joining her. Within moments both girls were eating like starving animals. The spoons scraped loudly against the bowls. Silas watched them without comment, leaning back in his chair. Lena finally slowed down and wiped her mouth with her sleeve. You didn't ask questions. Silas shrugged. Didn't need to. Mira frowned. Everyone else does. Silas looked at the fire in the stove. Everyone else likes stories. Lena studied him carefully. You don't? Stories cause trouble. Silence settled over the cabin again. After they finished eating, Silas stood and added wood to the fire. He pointed toward the narrow bed. "One of you take it." Lena shook her head. "We share." Mira nodded in agreement. "Always." Silas grabbed a worn blanket from a chair and tossed it onto the floor near the fire. "I'll sleep here." Lena watched him carefully. "You're not worried about us?" Silas sat down slowly. "Should I be?" Lena gave a faint smile. "Probably." The fire crackled quietly as the room dimmed. The twins curled together on the bed. After a few minutes, Mira whispered into the darkness. "Why'd he take us?" Lena kept her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. "Maybe he's worse than the town." Mira shifted uneasily. "You think so?" Lena didn't answer immediately. From the other side of the room, Silas's voice suddenly came through the darkness. "Name's Silas." Both girls froze. "Walls are thin," he added calmly. Mira swallowed. "Sorry." Lena finally spoke again, softer now. "Lena." Mira added, "Mira." Silas gave a quiet nod they could barely see in the dim light. "Sleep." The fire burned low. The cabin grew darker. Lena turned her head slowly toward the fireplace before closing her eyes. Something above the mantel caught her attention. A piece of metal hung from a nail. Old. Burned. Half melted by fire. She squinted in the fading light. It looked like a sheriff's badge. Morning came soft and gray through the cabin's single window. The fire had died to embers, leaving shadows that clung to the corners of the room. Lena sat up first, brushing ashes from her sleeve, her eyes immediately on the burned badge above the fireplace. She reached for it, fingertips tracing the warped metal. "Sheriff?" she asked quietly, not moving from her place on the bed. Silas stepped closer, hands in his coat pockets, his eyes lingering on the girls with something unreadable. "Used to be," he said simply. Mira sat up, rubbing her arms. "What happened?" she asked, her voice small but insistent. Silas's jaw tightened as he turned toward the corner of the room, staring into the shadows like they held answers he wasn't ready to give. "Town happened," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. Lena glanced between him and Mira. "You killed someone." Silas didn't look at her. He didn't deny it. "They killed first." Mira frowned. "Who?" His eyes flicked toward the window, the hills beyond, gray and distant. "People with power," he said. Lena's fingers dug into the blanket beneath her. "Like, the governor's family?" Silas froze for the briefest second, eyes narrowing. "You've heard things," he said carefully. "We hear everything," Lena replied, voice sharper than intended. A long silence followed. Mira tilted her head, studying the burned metal. "Why's it burned?" Silas's hand hovered over the badge for a moment before he plucked it from the wall. "Some stories rot better buried," he muttered. Lena leaned forward, eyes scanning the back of the badge. A name was etched into the metal, faint but legible despite the warping: Sheriff Daniel Hale. Myra's stomach tightened. "Hale," she echoed, voice small. Lena's eyes snapped to Silas. "You belong to them?" Silas's lips pressed into a thin line. "Once." He set the badge on the table, running a calloused thumb over the burned edges. "They thought they could own me. They thought they could break me." Myra's hands tightened into fists. "Did they hurt someone?" Silas's eyes darkened. "A daughter." Lena and Mira exchanged glances. The air in the cabin felt colder, heavier. "Your daughter?" Lena whispered. Silas nodded, voice rough. "Town said she ran away." "They lied." Myra's breath caught. "And us, the same people?" Silas shook his head slowly. "Different victims. Same town." Lena's voice rose slightly, trembling with anger. "They burned our parents' farm." Silas stiffened. He looked at her, studied her, and finally exhaled. Then we've got more in common than I thought. Mira leaned back against the wall, eyes wide. You mean, revenge? Silas's gaze returned to the burned badge. Justice first. Revenge later. Lena stared at the emblem, a symbol of authority now twisted and useless. So you fight them, with us? Silas didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. His eyes held a quiet understanding, a silent agreement. Mira shifted forward. The same family? Silas nodded once. They control the courthouse. The sheriff's office. The roads. Everything. Lena let out a bitter laugh. Then no wonder they left us alone in town. Left you? Silas asked, voice low. They never expected you to survive, Mira said. Lena folded her arms. They think wild things can't plan. Silas's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. Wild things often survive. The three of them sat in silence for a moment. The weight of what they had discovered hung between them like smoke. Lena's eyes lingered on the badge one last time. So, we're not just running from people anymore. We're running toward them. Silas's hand hovered over the table. And when the time comes, we'll stop running. Myra's voice was barely audible. Can we really do that? Silas met her gaze, steady and unwavering. We have to. Or they win. Lena leaned back against the wall, fingers brushing the burned wood floor. Then let's learn how to fight first. Silas nodded slowly, looking at each of them. Good. You're survivors already. That's step one. Mira swallowed, uncertainty mixed with a growing fire inside her chest. Lena studied the badge again, burned and twisted, a memory of power misused, a warning and a promise all at once. We'll need more than luck, she said quietly. Silas's eyes scanned the cabin, resting briefly on the rifle above the stove. We'll need patience. And fearlessness. Myra's fingers tightened around the blanket beneath her. We can do that, she said. Lena nodded. We have to. The three of them sat together, the cabin quiet except for the soft crackle of embers and the distant wind through the trees. Outside, the forest waited, holding secrets as old as the hills. Inside, the burned badge rested on the table, a silent witness to what had been lost and to what could be reclaimed. Silas led the twins into the woods the next morning. The trees were tall and close, their trunks dark with moss, roots tangled like the secrets they were about to uncover. Lena and Mira followed quietly, boots crunching against dry leaves, hearts quick with unease. Mira whispered, "Where are we going?" Silas didn't answer immediately, just walked, his steps certain, each footfall deliberate. Lena glanced at her sister. "We should have brought the rifles." Mira shook her head. "He wouldn't let us." "Maybe he trusts us to survive anyway," Lena muttered. Silence stretched between them until Silas finally spoke. "Stop." They froze. Ahead, the earth had been turned, rough and uneven. A simple wooden marker jutted from the soil, splintered and weathered. No name was written, but the ground smelled of something old and iron-like. Mira stepped closer, her voice trembling. Who is it?" Silas's jaw tightened, his eyes dark and distant. "My daughter," he said, the words falling heavy into the quiet forest. Lena's hand went to the rifle she had slung across her back. She didn't lift it, but the gesture was enough to mark her presence, to show they were alert. "What happened?" Mira whispered, voice almost breaking. Silas's eyes scanned the shadows around them. "Town said she ran away. They said she was careless. I know better." Lena knelt beside the grave, her fingers brushing the loose soil. "She didn't run," Mira said softly. "No," Silas agreed, voice low. "They took her." Lena's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Silas looked at the twins like he was weighing whether to speak. "The same men who run the courthouse," he said. The twins exchanged a glance. Myra's stomach churned. "The same people who burned our parents' farm," she said slowly, voice trembling with recognition. Silas's shoulders stiffened. What? Lena looked at Mira. It's the truth. They didn't care about us. They never do. Silence fell again, heavy and suffocating. The wind moved through the trees, rattling branches like whispers of long-forgotten promises. Lena's hands clenched into fists. Then maybe it's time they paid attention, she said. Myra's lips parted. You mean, revenge? Lena didn't answer immediately, just stared at the broken marker. Silas's hand hovered over the top of the wood. You felt loss, he said quietly. You know what it does to a person. You felt the town's cruelty. Mira nodded, her eyes wide. Yes. And you survived, he said. That's why you're here. Lena's voice was firm, almost certain. We can't just let them get away with it. Silas's gaze swept across the forest. No, he said, voice low. We can't. But be careful. Anger without strategy is just a fast way to end up like them. Mira leaned closer to the grave. So what do we do? Silas knelt, brushing leaves from the ground. We remember. We plan. And we fight smart. Lena glanced at her sister, hands shaking slightly. We've survived worse already. Mira nodded, swallowing hard. We know the pain. We know the fear. That's something they can't take from us. Silas looked at both of them, his face hardening. Then you'll have to trust me. And trust yourselves. Lena and Mira exchanged a look, the weight of shared grief settling between them. We do, Lena said finally. The three of them remained at the grave for a long moment, listening to the wind and the distant calls of birds, the forest holding its breath around them. Myra's fingers dug into the soft earth. Do you think they'll ever pay for it? Silas didn't answer immediately. Instead, he straightened, eyes scanning the forest like a hunter. They will. But not yet. Lena clenched her jaw. Then we wait. And learn. Silas nodded. We wait. And we prepare. The twins stood beside him, the weight of their pasts pressing down, but their resolve growing. Outside the circle of trees, the town slept, ignorant of the secrets buried both in soil and in memory. Inside the forest, three broken lives now shared a purpose, bound together by grief, rage, and a determination that could not be crushed. As they turned to walk back toward the cabin, the wind shifted again, carrying with it the faint scent of smoke and iron, a reminder of what had been lost and what was still to come. Silas laid the rifle on the table, its cold metal reflecting the weak morning light. Ever fired one? He asked, his eyes on Lena first. She shook her head. No. Mira looked nervously between them. Neither. Silas lifted the weapon slowly. Good. Means you won't be stupid yet. Lena frowned. Why is that good? Silas's eyes didn't waver. Because learning doesn't hurt as much before you know what you're doing. The twins exchanged glances, a mixture of curiosity and wariness. Silas walked them outside to a clearing near the cabin. The ground was uneven, littered with rocks and tree roots. He set the rifle down and watched silently as Lena and Mira approached. First, he said, breathe. Lena huffed impatiently. I breathe all the time. Not like that, Silas said, stepping closer. Slow. Controlled. Calm your body before you kill. You can't take aim if your heart is racing. Mira knelt beside a fallen log and adjusted her stance. We're not killing anyone, she said quietly. Not yet, Silas replied. Lena aimed the rifle at a distant tree stump. Do we just pull the trigger? Silas shook his head. No. Hold. Breathe. Wait. Focus. Lena tried again, tightening her grip until her knuckles turned white. Mira mirrored her stance, hands shaking. It's heavy, Mira whispered. Silas stepped beside them. Then hold it with your arms. Let your body do the work, not your hands. Don't flinch. Lena fired. The shot went wide, striking a rock with a sharp ping. She cursed under her breath. Again, Silas said. Mira fired next, closer this time, but the bullet hit the ground a foot short. Closer, he said, voice steady. The day stretched, each shot followed by adjustment, correction, repetition. The twins began to sweat, their arms trembling, their hands raw. Lena muttered, "This is stupid. We're wasting time." "Patience," Silas said. "Time is all you have." Hours passed. Their aim improved, small victories building confidence. Mira hit the stump once, then twice. Lena's shots landed closer, a ragged smile breaking through her scowl. Silas watched them quietly, noting each movement, each hesitation, each flicker of fear turning into determination. When the sun began to dip behind the hills, he called them together. Good. Not perfect. But better than yesterday. And better than most townsfolk. Lena wiped sweat from her forehead. "You're training us for something, aren't you?" Silas looked at the fire burning low in the stove near the cabin. "Maybe." Myra's eyes widened. "You mean, for the governor too?" Silas didn't answer immediately, letting the question hang. The silence was heavy but not uncomfortable. "We're ready," Lena said finally. Silas's eyes softened, just slightly. "You're survivors. You've learned more in a week than most learn in years. But remember, a gun only gives you the chance. It doesn't make the fight easy." Myra's fingers hovered over the rifle, gripping it like it might protect her from the entire world. Lena glanced at her sister. "We survived worse already. We can handle this." Silas nodded. "Good. You'll need more than courage. You'll need patience, timing, and the willingness to see the truth in their eyes without flinching." The wind stirred in the trees, a low whisper carrying through the clearing. Lena exhaled slowly. "We won't flinch." Silas looked at both of them, the weight of his gaze heavy but steady. "Then you understand why we train. It's not just about hitting a target. It's about becoming something the town can't ignore." Mira swallowed hard. "We will be something they fear?" Silas's lips curved faintly. "Not fear yet. Respect. Then survival. Then maybe, fear. If it comes to that." The girls looked at each other, a spark lighting behind their eyes. The fire in their chests was growing. For the first time, they didn't feel like wild things lost to the world. They felt like hunters. Silas turned to look at the hills stretching beyond the cabin, gray in the late light. "Tomorrow, we begin the next lesson. You'll learn to move, to strike, and to see what others hide." Lena nodded, determined. "We're ready." Mira glanced at the rifle in her hands, then up at Silas. "We're ready." And for the first time, the cabin felt less like a shelter and more like a place where they were being forged, sharpened, into something dangerous, something unstoppable, something the town would one day remember. The sound of hooves pounding dirt reached the cabin before anyone saw them. Lena and Mira froze, eyes darting toward the trees. Silas stepped outside, hands resting lightly on the rifle above the table. "They're here," he said simply. The twins watched as Sheriff Cole and two deputies rode into the clearing, dust kicking up around their boots. "Open up!" Cole shouted. His voice carried across the woods, sharp and commanding. Silas walked to the door slowly, unhurried. "Children," Cole said, spitting to the side. "You harboring criminals now?" "Children," Silas repeated evenly. "They didn't ask for your protection." Cole's eyes narrowed, scanning the clearing. "They stole. They broke the law. You shelter them, Hale, and you'll answer for it." Lena stepped out from behind Silas, hands gripping her rifle. Mira joined her, both girls tense but steady. Cole's eyes widened for a brief second at the sight. "Look at that," he muttered under his breath. "Raise them into wolves." Lena's jaw tightened. "We were wolves before." The deputies fidgeted, uneasy, sensing the danger in the quiet standoff. Cole's hand hovered near his holster. You girls should have died with your parents. Myra's face went pale, but her grip didn't falter. Silas's eyes were cold, steady. That's enough, he said quietly, but firmly. Cole laughed, the sound harsh in the open air. You think your mountain hermit can stop us? We'll be back with warrants. He spurred his horse. And next time, we won't be so polite. Dust swirled in the cabin's clearing as the men rode off. Lena exhaled sharply, lowering her rifle slowly. They're scared, Mira said quietly. Silas's jaw tightened. Good, he muttered. Lena's eyes narrowed. It won't stay that way. They'll come again. Silas nodded, turning to the girls. Which is why we train. Which is why you learn everything before they try to finish what they started. Myra's hands were trembling slightly. Do you think they'll come with fire next? Silas's gaze swept across the forest surrounding the cabin. Maybe. Or worse. Lena glanced at her sister. Then we wait. And when they do, Myra's voice faltered. We fight? Silas's eyes met both of theirs. We survive first. Fight second. But yes. When the time comes, we'll fight. Silence fell over the cabin as the three of them stood in the clearing. The wind rattled the trees, carrying a faint smell of smoke from the town below. Mira shifted her weight. Do you think anyone will believe us? Silas didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. His eyes held the weight of every injustice they had endured. Lena crossed her arms. They don't need to believe us. We just need proof. And time. Silas nodded. Time. And patience. And courage. Myra's lips pressed together. Do we have that? Lena glanced at her sister. We do. We survived worse than this. Silas looked at the hills beyond the clearing, gray and unbroken. Then they don't scare you anymore. Lena and Mira exchanged a look, a mix of fear and determination settling like fire in their chests. Not anymore, Lena said. Silas's hand brushed the rifle. Then tomorrow, we start again. Sharpen what you know. See the world through eyes they'll never expect. Mira looked down at the dirt, then back up at him. We'll be ready. Lena nodded, the forest around them echoing the promise. They won't win this time. Silas's eyes softened slightly. Good. Now go inside. Rest. You'll need all your strength for what comes next. The girl stepped back into the cabin, the shadows of the trees stretching long over the clearing, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Outside, the town slept, unaware of the storm gathering in the hills. Inside, the cabin felt alive, filled with purpose, fear, and an unspoken vow: they would not be hunted. They would not be tamed. And they would not lose again. That night, after the fire had burned low in the cabin stove, Silas walked to the corner of the cabin where the well sat under the eaves, hidden by shadows and years of neglect. Help me, he said, his voice low, urgent, almost careful not to wake the girls too early. Lena and Mira exchanged glances, curiosity mixing with unease, but they followed him outside. The moonlight barely reached the wooden cover of the well, warped and darkened with age. Silas lifted it slowly, the creak of rotting wood cutting through the quiet night. What is it? Mira whispered. Something important, Silas replied. He motioned for them to kneel beside him. With a grunt, he reached into the darkness of the well, his hand brushing over something metal. He pulled up a rusted tin box, its edges dented, the latch half broken. Lena reached for it first, running her fingers over the cold metal. What is it? She asked. Silas shook his head. Proof. Myra's eyes widened. Lena pried the lid open, and inside were letters, old and brittle, stamped with official seals. She held one up to the moonlight. Orders, signed by the governor, she read aloud, voice trembling slightly. Mira took another, unfolding it carefully. Land seizures, arrests, disappearances, she added, her voice lower now. Silas picked one more letter, his hands shaking, careful not to tear it. His fingers lingered over a name. "My daughter," he whispered, the weight of the words pressing down on him. Lena's eyes darted between the letters and Silas. "They killed her, because of you," she said softly. Silas shook his head slowly. "No. They killed her because I tried to stop them." Mira closed the tin box with a snap. "Then we finish what you started," she said, voice firm. Silas looked at the twins, their eyes bright with determination, and for the first time, he nodded fully. "Yes," he said. "We finish it." The wind shifted through the trees, carrying a faint scent of smoke and iron. The night felt alive, as if the forest itself knew the importance of what had been uncovered. Lena held one of the letters in her hand, scanning the inked words over and over, each line a link connecting their past to the crimes of the town's powerful. "So we confront them?" Mira asked, voice small but steady. Silas stared into the darkness beyond the cabin, thinking of the courthouse, the governor, the men who had taken his daughter and burned the twins' farm. "We prepare," he said finally. "We wait. But when we move with everything they can't anticipate." Lena clenched her fists, letting the paper crinkle between her fingers. "Then we become more than wild things. We become a storm." Myra's lips pressed together, nodding. "A storm they won't survive." Silas's eyes softened briefly at the girl's resolve. "Good. You understand what it takes. Survival first. Strategy second. Then justice." The wind stirred again, brushing through the branches like a whisper, as if agreeing. Lena slid a letter into her coat pocket. "So where do we start?" she asked. Silas looked at the rifle mounted on the wall above the stove, then at the girls. "Tomorrow, we begin the lessons no one in town wants you to know. Movement. Observation. Patience. Silence." Mira shivered slightly but stood taller. "We're ready." Lena's gaze hardened. "We'll make them remember." Silas nodded, a faint edge of pride in his voice. "Then sleep. You'll need all your strength for the path ahead." The twins stayed quiet as they returned inside, the tin box now hidden beneath the floorboards. The cabin seemed smaller but safer somehow, filled with the weight of secrets and a plan, as if the walls themselves were conspiring with them. Outside, the forest remained still, holding the night and the promise of what was to come. Inside, 3 lives, broken and scarred, but unyielding, now shared a single, unwavering purpose: to reclaim what had been stolen, to survive the storm, and to make the powerful pay. The smell of smoke woke Lena before the flames were even visible. She bolted upright on the cabin floor, heart hammering. "Fire!" she shouted, shaking Mira awake. Mira scrambled to her feet, eyes wide, as the orange glow flickered through the windows. Silas was already moving, grabbing the girls and yanking them outside just as the first tons of flame licked the roof. "Quickly," he barked. Lena grabbed a bucket of water from the corner, but the fire was already too high, heat blistering the air. Mira shrieked as a roof beam cracked and fell, sending sparks flying. Horses stamped in the distance. Lena's eyes snapped to the tree-line. Figures emerged, Sheriff Cole and 2 deputies, rifles glinting in the firelight. "End of the road, hail!" Cole yelled, spitting as he waved his gun. Lena and Mira crouched behind Silas as he pulled them toward a patch of brush near the slope. "Stay low. Move fast." Bullets kicked up dirt around their feet, and the cabin groaned and cracked as flames consumed it. Myra's hands shook on her rifle. "We can't hold them off." Silas's jaw tightened. "Not meant to hold them off. Meant to survive." Lena glanced at Mira. "We still have the letters." Mira clutched the rusted tin box close to her chest. "Yes. That's everything." Cole barked a laugh. "Burn it all. Show them who rules." The fire roared, smoke twisting into the night sky. Lena felt the heat on her skin, the roar in her ears, but she didn't flinch. Mira hugged the box tighter. Silas's hand rested on the girl's shoulders. "Stay with me," he said calmly. "We're not done." Cole and the deputies moved closer, confident, unaware that the twins were no longer frightened. Lena's eyes narrowed. "We're not running," she whispered to Mira. Mira nodded, jaw set. "We're not." Silas's gaze swept over the burning cabin, the debris, the scattered belongings, the memories turning to ash. "Good," he said softly. "Anger is useless without focus. Remember that." Lena glanced back at the ruins of the cabin. Everything they had known as safety, shelter, a place to call home, was gone. Yet she felt something else, stronger than fear. Rage, yes, but also purpose. Mira looked up at Silas. "Then what now?" Silas turned to face them, the night wind whipping around his coat. "Now we survive. We learn. We plan. They think they can scare us? Let them try. We're ready for what comes next." Lena clenched her fists. "We'll make them regret it." Mira nodded, eyes glinting in the firelight. "Every last one of them." The fire crackled behind them, consuming the cabin, leaving only smoke and ash to mark what had been. Silas's voice was quiet but firm. "Good. Let it burn. It can't touch what we carry inside." Lena and Mira followed him down the hill, into the shadows, the tin box safely hidden under Lena's coat. The flames painted the forest in red and orange, flickering across their faces, a signal to the night. Cole's voice echoed in the distance, rage and disbelief tangled together. "Hail! You think you can hide forever?" Lena smiled grimly. "We're not hiding." Myra's voice was steady. "We're coming." Silas led them away from the smoke, toward the hills and the trees that would keep them alive. The cabin was gone, but nothing else mattered. The letters, their purpose, their resolve, they remained intact. And in that firelight, they all understood one truth: the town had underestimated them. Badly. The storm was only beginning. By dawn, the smoke from the burned cabin had faded, leaving only charred timbers and ash in its place. Lena, Mira, and Silas crouched behind a ridge, watching the valley below. The town spread out like a quiet nest, unaware that its walls of control were already cracking. Silas whispered, "They'll come. They always come." Lena's fingers rested on the rifle, knuckles white. "We're ready," she said. Mira nodded, stomach twisting with nerves but chin held high. "We have to be." Silas's gaze swept across the valley, noting the empty streets, the courthouses, the sheriff's office, every place where power lingered like a shadow. "Patience," he murmured. "Let them make the first move. They'll expose everything if we wait." Hours passed, the three of them still and silent, listening to the wind, the faint calls of birds, the distant clatter of wheels. Lena's eyes never left the town. Mira kept glancing at the tin box beneath her coat, letters pressed against her chest like a secret lifeline. Silas finally broke the quiet. "They'll send someone first. Scouts. Watchers. People who think they can intimidate you." Lena leaned forward, voice low but hard. "We intimidate them first." Silas's lips curved in the faintest smile. "Careful. Silence speaks louder than bullets sometimes." Mira swallowed hard. "Then we wait in silence." Lena's eyes scanned the valley again. A movement caught her attention. Two riders, careful and slow, emerged from the outskirts of town. "Scouts," Silas said quietly. "Good. We'll see what they've learned." Lena tightened her grip on the rifle. "They don't know us yet. They won't expect." A shot rang out from the ridge across the valley, cutting through the morning air. The scouts dropped behind a fence, startled. Lena's breath caught. "Did we?" Mira began. Silas shook his head. "No. Someone else." Lena's eyes widened as a third figure emerged from the shadows of the trees opposite the scouts. A figure moving fast, silent, precise. "Who?" Mira whispered. Silas's jaw tightened. "A messenger. Or a warning. Either way, they test us." Lena's pulse surged. "Then we return the test." Silas crouched, voice calm but firm. Steady. Wait for the right moment. Do not strike early. Let them reveal themselves fully. The scouts peeked over the fence again, nervous, twitchy. Lena raised her rifle, hands steady. Mira followed suit, breathing deep, the letters still secure under her coat. The wind shifted, carrying the faint smell of smoke and dust from the burned cabin, a reminder of what they had survived. Lena's finger hovered over the trigger. Silas's voice cut through the quiet. Now. Observe first. Strike if necessary. But silence is our ally. The scouts froze, unsure, hearts racing, eyes darting toward the ridge where the twins crouched. Myra's voice was a whisper. They think we're just girls. Lena's lips pressed together. They're about to learn otherwise. The wind picked up again, brushing against the rifles, the embers of the past fire, the tin box, the letters, the hidden truths. Time slowed, each second stretching, heavy with anticipation. Silas's eyes never left the valley. Patience, he repeated. Lena exhaled slowly, her eyes locked on the scouts, seeing their fear, their ignorance, their arrogance. Myra's hands tightened around the box. We know everything now. They can't hide it from us. Lena's jaw clenched. Then let them come. Silence returned, thick and palpable, the kind that makes the heart beat faster than any shout. The scouts shifted nervously, unaware that the ridge they watched was not just a place, they were facing a storm. Lena and Mira shared a glance, a silent promise passing between them. Silas nodded once, a subtle affirmation. The first move is theirs, he murmured. And in that moment, crouched on the ridge with the valley below, the fire behind them, and the secrets they carried, the girls understood something profound. The town thought they had lost, thought the wild girls were tamed. They were about to discover they had underestimated not just survivors, but hunters. The day stretched ahead, long and tense, every shadow, every movement, every breath a part of the silent standoff that would change everything. And for the first time, Lena and Mira felt a terrible clarity. Survival was no longer enough. They had to win. The sun hung low over the hills, painting the forest in gold and shadow. Lena, Mira, and Silas crouched near a narrow ridge overlooking the town, rifles ready, hearts pounding. Silence wrapped the air like a living thing. The scouts from yesterday had returned, this time with reinforcements, 3 riders moving cautiously along the dirt road, eyes darting to the trees. Lena's jaw tightened. They think they can outsmart us. Myra's grip on the tin box under her coat was tight enough to whiten her knuckles. We know more than they do. Silas's eyes swept over the valley. Good. Let them come closer. We'll see what kind of recklessness they bring. The riders moved slower now, uncertainty in their posture, unaware that the wild girls they mocked were waiting, patient and quiet, atop the ridge. Lena whispered, "Do we wait for the right shot, or do we make the first move?" Silas's eyes didn't waver. "We wait. But watch everything. Every gesture. Every hesitation. They'll reveal their weakness." Time stretched, tension so thick it pressed on their chests. The wind stirred the leaves, carrying dust and the faint scent of smoke from the burned cabin days ago. Mira tilted her head, voice low but firm. They don't see us as threats. They never do. Lena exhaled slowly. Then we make them pay attention. The scouts finally stopped in the middle of the road, dismounted, weapons ready, eyes scanning the forest. One muttered something to the others. Lena could hear fragments. Crazy, those girls. Hale. Mira leaned close. They're afraid, just not enough yet. Silas's jaw tightened. Fear isn't enough. You need respect, control. They'll learn both today. Lena raised her rifle, resting the stock against her shoulder. Mira did the same, fingers brushing the trigger lightly. The scouts' heads lifted, scanning upward, tension coiling like a snake ready to strike. Lena's heartbeat thudded in her ears. On my mark, Silas whispered. Wait for the exact moment. Not sooner. Not later. The riders tensed, unaware of the rifles trained on them, the letters hidden under Myra's coat, the eyes in the trees watching every subtle movement. Lena exhaled slowly, letting the cool forest air steady her. Mira followed, her breath synchronized, body still, mind alert. Silas watched the valley, calculating. Now, he murmured. Lena squeezed the trigger, a single shot ringing sharp through the quiet hills. The bullet struck the fence near the scouts, throwing up dirt and splinters. They ducked instinctively, eyes wide with alarm. Mira fired next, her shot precise, clipping the edge of the dirt road. A rider cursed, spinning around, searching for the source. Silas didn't move, letting the girls act. Lena fired again, this time aimed just to warn, striking a post near one of the horses. Mira followed, bullets hitting with surgical accuracy, making the scouts realize too late they were being hunted from above. Panic rippled through the group as the riders scrambled to mount, weapons fumbling in their hands. Lena's fingers never wavered. Myra's eyes gleamed, fierce and unflinching. Silas finally stepped forward, his voice carrying across the valley. "Tell them what you are, girls." Lena leaned over, eyes blazing. "We're survivors. And hunters." Myra's voice joined hers, clear and steady. "You underestimated us." The scouts froze, terror flickering in their eyes, realization dawning too late. Silas's gaze swept the valley one last time before lowering. "Good. Now watch. Learn. Remember. The town is ours to see, and theirs to fear." Lena exhaled, shoulders tense, but steady. Mira clutched the tin box, letters pressing against her chest. Outside the ridge, the forest held its breath, the wind carrying the echoes of gunfire in defiance across the hills. Silence returned slowly, broken only by the distant, panicked clatter of horses' hooves retreating. Lena lowered her rifle, eyes sweeping the valley. Mira exhaled, finally letting the tension ease just a little. Silas's hand rested on the top of the ridge. They now know who waits for them. And who cannot be ignored. The girls exchanged a glance, the fire in their chests burning brighter than any fear. The town below had received its first warning. And from the mountain, the verdict was clear: the wild girls, the orphan twins, were no longer prey. They were the storm of the valley stretched below them, quiet, but the tension hummed like electricity through the air. Lena crouched at the ridge's edge, rifle steady, eyes tracing the courthouse roof where the governor's emblem glinted faintly in the morning sun. Mira pressed the tin box tightly against her chest, letters inside carrying proof of every crime, every abuse of power. Silas's eyes never left the valley. "He's out there.